Sneakers and Cleats, the podcast. Welcome back to the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. It's Thursday, January 25th. This is episode 70. I'm Matt Roy, Chuck McIntyre, Zack Hedrick. Not hungover, but we are here.
Gosh, we're just starting right out of the gate, huh?
Yeah.
Well, clarification, I got a vaccine, everybody. So.
Not hungover, but just it's interesting to hear what the remedies are for hangovers, and that might actually make for a decent podcast at some point.
I mean, when we're in the
useful information,
we're in the thicket of summer, we can talk about our hangover cures. Because I have a very specific elixir that I use to try and get
tried and true.
Tried and true remedy.
In my day, we just slugged it out, Matthew.
Well, yeah, that's what my mom always used to say. Hair of the dog, hair of the dog. A little bit more will help you out.
There you go.
But
tried and true formula.
All of that stemming from Zack drinking a Gatorade with one of those extra electrolyte Gatorades. And so I was just telling Chuck that between that or Pedialyte, like those tried and true methods the next day, if you can keep it down.
New age.
Anyway, this is episode 70, so obviously we start, as we always do, with the number of what our episode is, so that is number 70. We have a couple of good Cowboys. Zach Martin, obviously the one I always think of as of right now when it comes to the number 70. Another good Cowboy, though, Rayfield Wright, Hall of Famer for the Cowboys in the 70s, I think, early 70s. So
60s and 70s, I think.
Yep. So, Chuck, anyone else coming to mind?
You had Jim Marshall on the list of the Purple People Eaters back in the 70s. That was a really good Vikings team, but just could never get over the hump.
How many Super Bowls did they make it to? 2?
I think 4, wasn't it?
No, I think they've been
before my time.
I don't remember.
They've been to 4 as a franchise. I just can't remember how many or which one that was. I thought that they had lost. Oh no, they didn't make it in '99. That was the kick.
They lost to the Steelers. They lost to the Raiders. Who else did they lose to? Oh well.
I don't know. Anyway, so we got
Moving
that, and
on.
then obviously as we don't have very good. I'm not gonna say good players, but like flashy players. For 70 or pretty much like 55 through 80. So I've started putting down like in the year. So in the year 1970, the Chiefs beat the Vikings. That was their only Super Bowl win until Lord and Savior Patrick Mahomes came to Kansas City. They won Super Bowl 423-7 over the Vikings. June 12th, 1970, Doc Ellis threw a no-hitter while on LSD. So that's a good
Most 70s thing ever.
I once got stiffed as a youngster from an autograph by Doc Ellis. So all this folklore
bitter
about Doc
it.
Ellis being, this character of baseball, it's like,
I have that same
whatever.
I have that same feeling about Emmitt Smith. I got stiffed by an autograph from Emmitt Smith while he was playing golf in this charity golf tournament, and he was just like, "I don't bother you guys. Well, your place of work." So I hated Emmitt Smith ever since. Saw him like 20 years later, and he's like, "Yeah, I was kind of a dick back then." That's Orioles beat the Reds 4-3 in the 1970 World Series. The Knicks beat the Lakers in the NBA Finals that year, and the Bruins beat the Blues in the Stanley Cup Finals. Anything else having to do with 70, guys? No? I think that was pretty much it.
I was 6
It's
years
good
old.
score in golf.
It's a good score in golf. I've never done it and probably never will. So let's get to the Spurs. We have a lot to talk about. We got Spurs. We got the coaching carousel continuing to roll on in the NFL and some conference championship previews that we'll get to as well. But Thunder fall to the Spurs last night, 140-114. The Spurs fall to 8-36. And I think I saw a tweet from you that pretty much hit the nail on the head, Zach. It was like open gym for the Thunder last night. They just couldn't, there was no contesting any shots whatsoever.
Well, even on the ones they were contesting, I mean, it's just the Thunder have shooters, man. And this is probably like the most complete team since when they had Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden all on the same team. Those were some fun Thunder teams. I remember watching them back in my college days. And this is just a wide open team. They've got so many good athletes all over. The two Jay Wills, Josh Giddey. It's just like, man, they are just hitting everything from everywhere. And then, of course, it starts and ends with SGA.
Yeah. SGA is phenomenal. I think they're second in the West right now, 31-13.
Oh, first.
Something
Yeah,
like that.
first.
Oh, did they just overtake the Timberwolves?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So anyway, they're phenomenal. SGA is probably a top 10 player in the NBA at this point, and between him and Chet and Jaden Williams, I think Jalen Williams, Lou Dort, ASU Pride, they're phenomenal. They're phenomenal, and the Spurs are not.
I think what's fascinating, and I really haven't been paying attention to what they've been doing, is, they had a couple of down years, and then last year they were hovering around 500, but not horrendously bad down years. I mean, even when they were winning, 45, 47 games, they were still above 500 while they were building to this point. They had a couple of down years a couple of years ago, but those teams still won, 27, 28 ball games.
Yeah, they bottomed out there for a little while. That's how they got Chet.
But if bottoming out is 27 or 28, that's not too bad.
No.
So, I mean, during this Sam Presti run, they've been pretty damn good. I mean, overall. Again, they had a couple of bad years a couple of years ago, but those other teams were above 500 while they were building towards this. So, I don't know. It's just fascinating to watch and see how they've done it because it doesn't look like they're going away anytime soon, does it?
And they're a young roster, too. I mean, so.
Second youngest team in the NBA.
Yeah. So you got to think, it's like, hey, not that it's an exact blueprint for the Spurs, but it's just like, hey, if you kind of still take your lumps a little bit, you got to look at a couple years down the road, Spurs, this could be you as well.
The Thunder were never just as bad as the Spurs currently are, though. That's just to Chuck's point. They never bottomed out like this.
Right. They have a few more role players than the Spurs do currently.
Right.
Look at those records.
He's showing me the records of all the teams. Their worst year was the 2020 year when they went 22-50, and then it was 24 and 58. And then 40-42, and right now they're 31-13. But they're a good team. They always have been a good team. They bottomed out there for 2 years. But what just strikes me is how bad the Spurs defense is. Like, since the last time we spoke on these airwaves and this podcast, they allowed 70 points to Joel Embiid. He does that to a lot of people. He doesn't do that to a lot of people, but he does score on a lot of people. I think he's averaging 37 points right now, which is the most in the NBA. And then they allowed basically an open gym to the Thunder. I mean, SGA did whatever he wanted. They pretty much did whatever they wanted all game. And you would think when you have a player like Wemby in the middle who's blocking anything that comes close, they wouldn't allow 140 points, wouldn't allow 70 points to somebody, but they do on a consistent basis.
Mm-hmm. Well, and he's still, minutes restriction that should be coming off soon, but he's not playing a full, NBA game yet, which understandable, but even with him in the middle, there's just times when they're caught in transition and they're just so slow getting back.
Agree. I'll say this though, on a positive note, this is a lot easier to watch than what we watched back in
they have turned
late
it around
2023.
The past couple weeks, it's really better.
The way they're
better basketball.
Playing differently, Wemby playing the traditional five. You've got Sohan playing off the ball. Trey Jones, obviously they probably missed him a little bit last night. I think that's safe to say. Mm-hmm. It just looks like basketball. So in that regard, I'm happy.
The team is 1,000 times better with Trey Jones in the lineup. Yep. I mean, the Sohan experiment was a failure. As with him as the point guard, him coming off the bench or him being off the ball. Keldon coming off the bench is a little bit better. Zach Collins coming off the bench is better. When you substitute Zach Collins for Wemby, that's kind of the role that I think Zach Collins needs to play. So they're slowly figuring it out. But as you look at the team as a whole, it's still depressing. 8-36 isn't good, and I think all of us thought they were going to be better this year. But then when you look, the only reason that the game was on national TV yesterday was the Chet versus Wemby comparison. Mm-hmm. How did that matchup specifically live up to the billing, either in your head or the national hype that surrounded it? Because you have these 7-1 and 7-4 guys going at each other that look pretty much like they're cut from the same cloth.
Go ahead, Zach.
I think watching the game last night, I think Wemby, kind of had the edge early. Of course, it's January. There's still a lot of basketball left, but of course, it's the national storyline of, well, who's going to win Rookie of the Year? So everybody wanted to talk about that, during the game and at shoot-around that morning and stuff. I think Wemby does more just all over because it's the defensive impact, but also offensively too, and it was kind of fun. I mean, at the beginning of the fourth quarter, those two guys were kind of trading blows a little bit. I mean, and after Wemby kind of got his first dunk on him or whatever, he kind of stared down Chet, but I immediately thought, dude, scoreboard, like, come on.
Right, exactly. They're both really good players. I think it's interesting to watch how, the league tries to market and package this, if you call it a rivalry, this early in their career. I mean, it looks like they're going to be able to grow up together. Mm-hmm. And obviously, I think both teams are probably happy with what they got.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in the Rookie of the Year odds did shift a little bit towards Wemby last night. I mean, he was already the odds-on favorite. I think he was like -150. It's now 164. So I mean, it shifted a little bit towards him because of that matchup. He's probably going to win Rookie of the Year. He's not going to be anywhere close to Defensive Player of the Year because the team around him is so bad. Chet actually has the edge in the Defensive Player of the Year category.
I think it comes down to, for me right now, is who would you pay to see play?
I mean, a lot of people are paying a lot of money every night to see Wemby play. So
yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at too. I mean, would I pay to? If I'm going to go see the Thunder, I'm not going to see Chet.
Yeah, I'm going
to Spurs. I'm going to see Victor play.
Yeah, I think that's the difference between the Spurs and the Thunder is that the Thunder have an SGA, and I think we thought Devin Vassell was going to be a little bit better than he actually is right now, and hoping that he could maybe be like the Batman or the Robin to the Batman. I think Devin Vassell has kind of shown that he's not that role. He might be like a Chris Middleton to the Bucks.
Yeah, when he's on, he's good, but yeah, it's not consistent.
Yeah, it's not consistent anywhere near. So that brings us to what are we hoping from this season at this point from the Spurs? Are we basically just hoping to figure out who's going to stay on this roster?
I would say that's a fair assessment.
I mean, I hadn't thought about that, but I'll go with that. I mean, yeah, you're right. I think because I'm like you in a lot of ways. I mean, I expected more in terms of victories. I expected to see some cohesion at this point in the season, and I think there is some, but not to the degree that I thought we would see it. And did I think they were going to be this bad halfway through the year? No, I did not. So in that regard, there's a lot of me that's, my attention's going to other places at this point.
Yeah, I mean, just seems like we're trying to figure out who's going to be traded by the deadline and who's going to be traded in the offseason at this point. So that brings us to the trade deadline is a few weeks away. Who do you think will be traded? Who do you think is like not replaceable, but isn't the ones that are gelling with this team right now? Who should be on the chopping block? Obviously, Wemby's not going anywhere. The overwhelming likelihood is that Devin Vassell wouldn't go anywhere because he just got signed to that new contract extension. I think Trey Jones is probably safe. Everyone else, it seems like, bye at this point. I think they're almost ready to give up on the Shohan experiment too.
Well, that's a tough one because of how or where they're at. They kind of made their bed with this roster, and I know it's been said that this team is going to dictate what we do next. Mm-hmm. So, based on that, you got to believe somebody's probably going somewhere and probably for draft picks at this point. But, we'll see. I mean, it's really hard to know based on how they started the year and what they were trying to do. Wemby playing away from the basket, Jeremy playing the point. So now, I mean, do you see enough over the last 4 or 5 weeks to go, hey, maybe there's something here? To me, that's what I see over the last 4 or 5 weeks. But again, since the way they started based on how they were trying to play, I don't know if you can make an assessment on moving people at this point based on how little you've actually seen them play together as a unit or as a group.
Zach?
Yeah, I'm with you, Chuck. I think those first 20, 22 games, whatever it was, you almost have to kind of throw those out and disregard them because it was such a non sequitur of kind of like, what they're playing like now. I think they've seen it's like, the value of having a guy who can facilitate like Trey Jones and running the offense through Wemby. It helps everybody else out because last night you saw it. There were 3 blue shirts coming to Wemby, and it's just an easy dish. Somebody's open, and it led to an easy bucket. So it's just like, if they're keying on Wemby, then somebody else is going to be open, and hopefully it's like they can make their shots. Sohan's been better, especially with his 3-point shot lately, but it didn't fall last night. Maybe they like him. Again, there's a lot of young guys. Blake Wesley has really come on lately. He's been a pest on defense. He's been really good, showing a lot of energy. Pop said it. It's like we've been having to give him minutes because it's like he's making an impact. So hopefully that kind of defensive mentality, it starts on the defensive side. You get a guy like that, and hopefully it spreads around to everybody else. Wemby obviously has that defensive mentality. You get a few more guys like that, then maybe you can be in some more competitive ball games.
If I was to ask both of you to name one player that's most likely to be traded by the February 8th deadline, who would it be? I have who I would think, but I want to hear you guys first.
This would just be a 100% spitballing, but I would say Keldon.
That's who I was actually going to say.
Yeah, I was going to say Keldon as well. He feels like the one that's not dispensable because I think we all like him here in the community and him on the team and his attitude and all that stuff. he's just the most viable trade option. He hasn't gotten that big long contract or anything like that. He's that glue guy. He provides some offense off the bench. So I think of all people, it's him and Doug McDermott are the two people that are probably on the chopping block.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see them, if they're going to unload somebody, maybe trade Doug McDermott to a contending team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
It'd be kind of nice to, because, that guy does everything the
Help
right
him out,
way.
yeah.
And good shooter. You got to believe he'd be able to help somebody.
All right, let's get to some conference championship previews. Let's go from the bottom of a league to the top of another league. Let's start in order. So Chiefs Ravens is first. Ravens are favored by 3.5. It's jumping around 3.5, 4 in Baltimore. Weather's not going to be super great, but it's not going to be as bad as it was last week for either team. Over under's 44.5. Zach, I'll start with you. Who wins? Why? And by how much?
Oh, man. I don't know. It's almost kind of a coin flip. The Ravens' defense is something. This is going to be Patrick Mahomes' best test, I think. If his receivers can show up and make some catches for him, because, they're going to key on Travis Kelce and try and take him away. I guess after last week, I guess there is enough Mahomes magic. It also largely depends on how Lamar Jackson is going to play.
It never runs
the most
out.
thing I'll take the Chiefs. I think it's close. It'll be within 3. The most thing I'm interested in watching this game is what does Jason Kelce do for an encore after his antics last week in Buffalo. So
that was my favorite part of the weekend. Chuck.
I guess it was my favorite part of the weekend, too, given what the Packers did Saturday night. I'm going to go with, I can't get that stupid meme out of my head with the Super Bowl colors and the teams that have played the last 2 years and the fact that the colors match up with the Ravens
theorists
and the 49ers.
It's all scripted.
49ers.
It's all scripted.
Yeah. So I therefore am going to go with the Chiefs until Taylor Swift proves otherwise. Swift, sorry. Didn't mean to mispronounce her name.
I'm going to go with the Chiefs. It's like betting against modern day Tom Brady. Like, are you really going to just bet against Tom Brady? I'm not. I'm not going to bet against Patrick Mahomes.
Or Andy Reid.
Yeah,
right?
or Andy Reid. Like, you see just the greatness there, the comparisons between them and Brady and Belichick. It's just there. So,
it's kind of that similar feeling, right? Less than 2 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
If the other team scores and they go up by 3 or 4, but there's still time left on the clock, it's like, well, there's still time left for Tom Brady. Patrick Mahomes still kind of has that same feeling.
Yeah, you're telling me right now that if the game is 24-20 with 2 minutes left and Mahomes and Reid have the ball, you're not just going to be like, all right, well, the Chiefs win.
Right.
It's exactly that feeling. So unless the Ravens come out and just bludgeon them and they're down 28-0 in the first half, then I'm probably not going to count out the Chiefs until there's no time left on the clock. So that's the feeling I always get, which sucks because I'm a Broncos fan and my wife is a Chiefs fan. So
she has scoreboard.
It's so annoying. Literally, since her and I have met, they have not been to the AFC Championship
6
game.
straight, huh?
It's really, really annoying. They sucked every year before that, and
You
the Broncos
should be happy
were good.
for her happiness,
In your
Matthew.
dreams, Cowboys fans.
I am really happy for her happiness
Yes.
for most of the year. Until every year when the Broncos get eliminated, I'm really upset at all of her happiness. But besides that, I'm good. But another question stems from that regarding Jason Kelce. If you guys were to go to a game and your significant other was there and you were just went in, because they said on the podcast, Jason Kelce was like, I went in telling her I'm going to take my shirt off and jump into the crowd. And she said, don't you dare. So if you did that, Chuck, what would your wife say if you were like, I'm going to take my shirt off, yell, and jump out of a press box and go drink with fans and then jump back in while I'm meeting the most popular person in the entire world? What would your wife say?
She would probably disown me. She's got many reasons to do that anyway. But I think, if you have that conversation before, she would go, I'm not going to participate in this. I'll stay at home and watch you do your thing on TV.
I liked his line of, I'm not asking for permission.
Yeah,
this
right.
is what's happening. It's like,
Right. I don't have that kind of clout around my house.
I
don't know
like
about
that
you
he.
guys.
Well, to his credit, he knows who he is. So
Right.
it's just like this is it. This
Yeah,
is what's
that's
happening.
pure. Yeah.
So sadly, that's a very Matt Roy thing to do. of just be like, I'm not asking for permission here. I'm just telling you it's going to happen here. So prepare yourself. And then her saying, please, God, don't. That's a very Matt Roy, Jordan Elder thing to do. But I don't think she'd be smiling behind the camera. I think she'd be like sitting there signing divorce papers while I did it. So
Maybe not. It's just a trial separation.
Yeah. But my favorite part about that was that after the podcast came out on Wednesday, that Kylie was like, we're getting a cat. I'm not asking for permission.
That's fair.
It was really funny. But all right, let's get to the second game. Lions 49ers. I think Chuck kind of told us where he's going with this by the conspiracy theorist logo, Super Bowl logo.
No, because I took the Chiefs because
that's the red in the logo for you.
No, I took the Chiefs even though that meme is screaming Ravens 49ers.
It is.
I'm therefore taking the Lions in this game. But it stinks because I don't have a reason to hate either team.
Yeah.
I like the fact that there's two locals playing in this game as well. Not to mention all the odd A&M connections too with the Lions. I mean, it's just a fascinating matchup, right? I don't know how the 49ers beat the Lions based on their performance on Saturday night, but something tells me they're going to be a little bit better. And I don't see how Debo doesn't play in this game. And again, that's me spitballing, right? He's at least got to be a
decoy or
some sort of decoy, right? Somebody to look over here, but not over here.
Yeah, going to suit up and
So hold on. By 7, so the line is 7. Are they? Oh, technically you're taking the Lions, so they're going to cover.
So they cover.
You're taking the Lions, they cover.
I'm going to go Lions. I think it's close. I think it's like 3 or 4 again. It's so. But I say
Lions to win.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Lions win. I think Debo Samuel is going to give it a go, but it's not going to be a factor. And like they did against Tampa Bay, it's like Mike Evans is going to get his. They've got other receivers where it's like he's going to get his numbers and everything, but so long as we bottle them up and they just aren't running rampant, I think the Lions get it done. I like Dan Campbell's attitude, and I think his team is really, kind of signed up with him of just like, we're going to go and bite the kneecap.
I think what last week's Niners-Packers game reminded me of, when Debo went out, it reminded me of the Tony Pollard injury against the Niners with the Cowboys. It changed the entire offense for the 49ers, and the fact that they were able to get through that gives me a little bit more confidence in them going into the next game. Yeah. Since at least this week they can game plan like, if Debo gets hurt on the first play, we're going to do this, and we're going to, kind of do that since he's already injured.
You still got Ayuk, Kittle, McCaffrey. I mean, it's a murderer's row.
Yeah, exactly. And like, it just gives them a little bit more time to game plan. That being said, the weather in Santa Clara this weekend is not going to be anywhere near as bad as it was last week. I'm expecting like a 41-31 kind of game, like a 34-31, something like that. Points. It is going to be beautiful. No clouds in the sky, not a lot of wind. It's going to be like almost like a dome, which makes me think the Lions offense is going to be a little bit better because obviously they don't play well outside. So I'm going to take the Lions to cover. I'm going to take the 49ers to win. But I think we're shaping up for 2 great games this weekend. So it is 1:28. You got to get out of here?
Yeah, probably.
I
need to get going.
Before we do the last one. So Zach's got to go do some actual work. So thanks for stepping in, Zach.
No
Appreciate
worries.
it. So now, sans Zach, we'll talk about some Jim Harbaugh. So Jim Harbaugh, hired by the Chargers now. He's leaving Michigan. Michigan is on top, obviously. They just won the national championship. But something about this leaves a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth. It reminds me of Pete Carroll leaving USC. Knowing that sanctions are coming, you're kind of on top. You're one of those premier programs. You're going to leave them in a space where it's just like, have fun with this.
Right.
Like, thanks for everything. Bye.
Right. But if you're Michigan, do you care? I mean, you won a natty. So, I mean, that's the age-old problem with all this. And then, all this coach hopping too. It's like, so of the 4 coaches that were in the football Final Four, only Sark is going to be back next year. I mean, who would have thought any of that? Everybody else is gone. Saban retired.
Yeah, Saban's gone. Oh, yeah, and then Kalen DeBoer. I forgot about Kalen DeBoer.
So, it's like if this is going to be coaching free agency, player free agency every year. Like, my brain's not big enough for all this. And I always try to ask myself, why is my interest waning? It's like, because I don't know who's playing for who. Is it, do I like the logo? Do I not like the logo? Is it really devolved to that why I'm watching these games? And I just don't have enough time to kind of keep an eye on all this stuff. And if there's going to be this much movement, should I be expected to care?
Yeah, and I like Michigan's move of keeping their offensive coordinator, the guy that took over for Jim. I mean, he coached like 6 of the 15 games last year because of both of Jim's suspensions. But to me, it's just kind of a wuss move. Like, stay there. I know you're on top. I know your name is the hottest in the coaching cycle right now, besides Bill Belichick, obviously. And I know it's just like strike while the iron's hot. But it's just kind of like a bye. Like, you're kind of just leaving them to be screwed. It's almost like if Bill Belichick, I don't know. It reminds me of Pete Carroll. Like, they got suspended. They had to put sanctions on their team. It reminds me of Herm Edwards at ASU last year. Like, they fired Herm, and then ASU had to have a self-imposed bowl ban this year and lose a bunch of scholarships and all that stuff. It's just like, I want the coaches to have to pay for their transgressions. And the fact that he's leaving without the sanctions being placed or without this actually coming to a conclusion leaves a bad taste in my mouth, because it's the kids that are going to have to deal with it, and the new coach that's taking over for him that's going to have to deal with it. So it just kind of makes this move salty to me.
Yeah, it's a tough situation for everybody, right? But again, I guess it's just the nature of the beast. When you got this kind of money involved and all these different moving parts that don't necessarily reward anybody for doing the right thing, then, this is kind of what you get. So, you keep rewarding bad behavior, this is going to happen.
Yeah, and then that's just the college ramifications of it, because now, I mean, obviously the Big Ten is changing forever. I mean, Washington was coming in. They basically had a Big Ten championship matchup, and neither of them have their head coaches anymore. So the Big Ten is going to be in a lot of flux. But you look at the NFL ramifications, and the division that he's going to is absolutely stacked, especially when you look at head coaching. You have Andy Reid, you have Sean Payton, and now you have Jim Harbaugh, 3 of the preeminent coaches of our time, or this generation, I would say. Then you have Antonio Pierce, who obviously did a good job last year. I have a little bit of ill will towards him because of his time at ASU and the recruiting violations that he left them with. But besides that, I don't know if this is a good job. Like, besides Justin Herbert, you're $46 million over the cap. You have Khalil Mack, who's going to be $38 million on your cap next year and is 32, 33 years old, something like that. Joey Bosa's $36 million against your cap. Keenan Allen, a very old Keenan Allen, is $35 million on your cap. And then Mike Williams is $34 million against your cap. Like, cut all those guys. The talent that you had goes out the window. And the roster is then having to be completely made over. So it doesn't seem like actually a good job there, besides the, Justin Herbert of it all.
Yeah, and LA and everything else. I don't know. The problem that they're going to have is what you just said, obviously, but that's one of those teams that pretty much every week they're in every game. They just can't close, So how far away are they, and how can they make the numbers work to try to keep most of that team intact? I mean, some of these guys, like, is Bosa going to be ready to start the season? Probably not, right? I mean, he's coming off a major injury. So I don't know. It's going to be fascinating to watch it all unfold. But I don't know. Again, some of these teams, it's like the NFL. Can you name half the coaches in the NFL at this point? Who's coaching where?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I can, just because I'm a nerd. But
and I could too when I was your age. It's just at this point, it's with all this movement, it's hard for me to commit neurons to who's coaching where.
It's certainly annoying that there is so much movement, and that the contracts at both levels are basically not worth the paper that they're printed on, and that only the players really get held to that standard. Coaches, you can go wherever you want, whenever you want. It doesn't seem like there's any ramifications for you. So that part is annoying, always has been annoying, and always will be annoying. Now, especially at the college level, I think that what we're seeing right now is annoying when it comes to the transfer portal, but they just opened Pandora's box with it. You wouldn't give an inch, so they took a mile, and the Supreme Court gave them a mile. So there was nothing they could do about that. But when it comes to the NFL, and specifically Jim Harbaugh, I just don't know if this is the job I would have wanted. He could have picked any of them. And if you look at all the openings, I think the Falcons' job is the one that I would have wanted. You just don't have the quarterback.
Yeah.
If you're looking at it, like, why the Chargers is my question.
And why is Belichick having a hard time finding a job?
I don't think he's having a hard time. I think he's just calculating. I think that Belichick, to get onto this little tangent, I think that Belichick's trying to find out if there's going to be another one open. We know it's not going to be the Eagles. We know it's not going to be the Cowboys. What about if Andy Reid retires? I want that job. There's a lot of speculation that Andy Reid might retire. And if that would be the job I want if I was Bill Belichick.
Yeah, that'd be the job I'd want too.
Be a generational quarterback of your time.
Amen.
And a decent cap room with a great GM and Brett Veach. I mean, that's the job I would want. That's what I think the holdup is, because the Falcons already brought him in for a second interview. Do you really need to interview him a second time? Like, you kind of.
Yeah.
I feel like that was just more for Bill Belichick to interview them again. He wanted to know about the Falcons, but. You still have Mike Vrabel out there who doesn't have a job yet, and there's a lot of people out there that don't have jobs, which I think, like, once Bill Belichick falls into his spot, then Vrabel will fall into his spot and everything else. But as far as all that goes, it was also staggering to me that, and last thing before we get out of here, is the comparison between how good people are in the AFC and the NFC is ridiculous. The worst team in the AFC could beat the crap out of the worst team in the NFC. And it's so – the parity throughout the conference is ridiculous. You just go through the teams, and while I pull this up real quick just to make sure I don't leave anybody out.
Yeah, are there – I'm sure there are. There's splits between interconference games this year and who won where. And
I'm sure there is. I didn't look those up.
Yeah, on paper, I would agree with you that it appears that, you get – a little bit more of a pass if you're on a really good NFC team like the 49ers. Again, who said this a couple weeks ago? If you would have told the 49ers going into the playoffs, all you have to do is beat the 9-7 Packers and then beat either the Lions or who was the other team? Who did the Lions beat? The Rams to get to a Super Bowl. That's the Brady formula all those years, right? You don't get as beat up because you're not playing these super great elite teams when the NFC had it over the AFC. And by the time you get to the Super Bowl, the NFC team has been through the baton death march. They show up on Sunday and have a harder time because the AFC team has had a little lesser problem or fewer challenges getting to the big game. And it's an attrition thing at some point. And that might prove to be the case this year too. I mean, the 49ers are a little banged up right now, but you would think that the Ravens and or the Chiefs were going to have a harder road to get to the big dance.
Well, and when you looking at like the talent and the quarterback head coaching pairs in the AFC compared to the NFC. The AFC, you have Baltimore, Lamar Jackson, John Harbaugh; Buffalo, Sean McDermott and Josh Allen; Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid; Kevin Stefanski and Deshaun Watson; Tua Tagovailoa and Mike McDaniel; C.J. Stroud and DeMeco Ryans. Don't really have a quarterback in Pittsburgh, but they still went 10-7. Joe Burrow and Taylor. Jacksonville's. I mean, they still went 9-8 this year, though. Like, you just look at the talent, and then in the other league, you have San Francisco. Okay, Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan. And then you have Dallas, almost fired their coach this year. Detroit, okay, they're good. Philly almost fired their head coach this year. Sean McVay almost retired last year. Tampa Bay, 9-8. You really trust Baker Mayfield to be great? If you look at like he's the sixth best quarterback theoretically in this league. You don't have anybody in the NFC compared to the talent pool that you have in the AFC, and it's just like a murderer's row. The second worst team in the AFC this year was the Chargers. They now have Jim Harbaugh.
Right.
Like, you look and it's just so out of balance. When, like, in the 90s, it was so out of balance towards the NFC, it swung 180 degrees the other way, and the AFC is stacked.
Yeah, the numbers, which you just spoke of, they say a lot. But I disagree with you on Baker. I think Baker's just fine.
I think he's good, but, like, I'm just comparing him to all the top-tier quarterbacks in the AFC, and then you have Baker, who is probably a top 5 quarterback in the NFC, but you look at the top 5 quarterbacks in the AFC, and you have Patrick, Josh Allen, You have Lamar Jackson. You have Burrow. You have all these quarterbacks who are just stacked and littered throughout the conference. Yeah. And then you have Baker, who is like, you have Baker, you have Jared Goff, you have Dak Prescott, you have Jalen Hurts, and you have Brock Purdy probably, and Matt Stafford. None of them are above.
You have Jordan Love.
That's a good point. Good point.
For 6 weeks anyway.
Yeah, exactly. We'll see how he does in the first half of the next season. But
yes.
That's all we got for you on today's Sneakers and Cleats podcast. And I'm going to try and do this from memory as I try and pull up the there we go. Excuse me. Remember to download, rate, review, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, tell a friend, tell an enemy. Thank you to Zack for stepping in for the first 25-ish minutes of this. He is going to do more important things with his day. And thanks to Chuck and thanks to Luis for always stepping in and handling the supers and all that stuff over there. We'll be back for episode 71 on Monday. And until then, everyone have a good weekend. And I guess go Chiefs, sadly.